Hey everyone, my name is Shelly with Nutrena Feeds, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit today about spring grasses and some of the dangers that can come along with those. I want to go over why these grasses can be a concern for us as horse owners and some best practices that we can implement at our place to ensure the safety and the well-being of our horses. So starting off, let's talk about why these grasses can be dangerous. Well, these grasses have been dormant all winter. They haven't been growing, but they've had a lot of time to get moisture. Then when we move into spring and we get into longer, more sunshiny days, these grasses start to begin to grow at a pretty rapid rate. While they're growing at this rapid rate, they're producing a lot of sugar, especially when they're pretty short. They contain a lot of sugar. So that presents us with a problem. So not only are these grasses really high in sugar, they're also very palatable to our horse. So they're overeating plus getting too much sugar, which leads us to some problems. So let's talk about the problems that we may face. So the first one we may run into is causing our horse to colic. Colic can happen for a wide range of reasons, but this might be one of them. Colic basically refers to any sort of abdominal upset in your horse, ranging from something as mild as maybe just a gassy stomach ache that we can manage at home, all the way to needing emergency medical attention from a veterinarian. Another thing that we may run into is causing the horse to founder. When a horse founders, their body is becoming inflamed from too much sugars from these grasses that we talked about. So this inflammation will travel through their body and go to their hoof capsule. In their hoof capsule, once it becomes inflamed, the hoof wall can start to separate from the coffin bone. Once this happens, this will make a horse very, very sore and can actually result in permanent lameness in your horse, which is absolutely not what we want. So talking about these two things, they're pretty severe things that can happen to your horse. So let's talk about some ways that we can prevent that and introduce our horses slowly to this grain grass. So it's important starting off that you have a dry lot available for your horses. So a dry lot can refer to anything from a stall to a run or a pasture that maybe just doesn't have any grass in it. Basically, it's just a confined area for your horses to be where the only thing that they're consuming is feed provided by you. Once you have this set up, we need to talk about turnout time. So big thing with turnout time is you want to make sure that when you turn them out on this grain grass that they're not going out on an empty stomach. It's already very palatable for them, so it's important to make sure they're not hungry. So prior to turnout, making sure that you're providing them with some forage to make sure that they're not going to overconsume. Another thing that's really important for this turnout time during the beginning months of spring is to make sure you're doing it in between the hours of 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. This window will allow the grasses to have the least amount of sugar they will have throughout the day. So starting off, we'll talk about kind of how to do this more on the conservative side. So you'll want to start off going 15 minutes for 3 days, then increasing 10 minutes for 3 days and so forth. So the first 3 days you'll be 15 minutes, the next 3 days you'll be 25 minutes, the next 3 days you'll be 35 minutes until you're up to a couple hours per day. Once you're up to those couple hours per day, if your horse hasn't had any adverse reactions, they're comfortable, their body's pretty accustomed to it, you can allow them full access. If you know your horse isn't as sensitive, you can start on a little less conservative time and maybe start them out at a half an hour a day and so forth till they're up to a couple hours a day. If you do have a horse that has any sort of metabolic concern like EMS or Cushing's, pasture might not be the greatest option for you, and their dry lot may need to be where they are at throughout summertime and springtime to make sure that they're not getting too high of sugar levels and to cause them to be sick during this time. Another thing that we can do to help our horses is to provide them with a grazing muzzle. This is a personal option, not all horses need it. It's really dependent on the horse. But basically what a grazing muzzle does is it goes right over their nose, kind of fits on like a halter would, but has tiny holes throughout it so the horse can still pick some green grass but not be overeating. This will provide them still with some turnout time and make sure that they can enjoy the nice weather with their buddies. So once they're accustomed to this, they haven't had any problems, all that good stuff, this is a really good time to look at the complete diet of the horse. So evaluating also what other things in their diet they're getting, including their grain. So like I mentioned that these sugar levels in these grasses are high, so it's good to look at the starch and sugar levels on your grain tag. Every grain will have a guaranteed analysis that will state the starch and sugar levels. These starch and sugar levels added together can be referred to as your NSC. NSC just refers to non-structural carbohydrates. So all that means is just your starch and sugar added together. So let's say that you have a starch sugar level of, you have a starch level of 10% and a sugar level of 5%, this would mean your NSC value is 15%. That'll just give you a good idea to see if the diet is appropriate. As always, just introduce your horses slow. If you ever have any questions, just reach out to your local Nutrena rep or your local veterinarian.